All right, let's go ahead and get started. I apologize for that. It was working and then it wasn't. All right, so again, thanks everyone for joining us on the call today. And even with getting a few minute late start, we hope to still end on time. So I don't want to take any more time of your day. So again, thank you so much for joining us. Before we get started, I just want to go over your webinar control panel. So if you'll see at the top, you have two little arrows that are pointing towards the edge of your screen. So if your webinar control panel ever gets in the way of what's on the slideshow, just click that, and then when you minimize it, the arrows will point the other direction towards the middle of your screen. You click that to open back up your control panel if you need it. Two buttons below the two arrows, you'll see a little hand, and that is where you can virtually raise your hand. And what I can do is I'll look on our list of attendees, and once we get to our Q&A session and you want to ask a question live over the phone, then you can click that button, and I'll see that you have a question, and then I will be able to call on you. Just keep in mind that everyone will be able to hear your question, and so there is another option for asking a question, which is at the bottom of your screen, and that is where you can enter a question, and that is just for the staff only, so the organizers of the drive. And if you enter a question there, we'll go through it, and then we'll answer your questions accordingly at the end of the presentation. So just really quickly what we're going to do, I'm going to go over our successes from YK 2013 from last year. We've got some great news coming out of the drives from last year. And then we'll hear from Tamara Hotchman, my colleague and counterpart over at Gift of Life Bone Marrow Foundation, and she'll just give you a little overview of the history and Gift of Life today. And then you'll hear from me to talk about planning and running a drive on Yom Kippur. And then we've got some special guests on the phone to hear about some best practices from temples last year. And you'll hear from people who are on the ground planning their drives. So you'll get to hear from the trenches, and I hope that that'll be really useful and helpful for everyone on the call. And then finally, time for Q&A. I know that there's probably a lot of questions out there, and so I hope that we'll have ample time for you to ask your questions. If you have questions throughout the presentation, feel free to go ahead and type it into the question box, and we'll collect those at the end. And then finally, you'll hear from me again, and we'll go over next steps for congregations that want to pursue this drive or this project. All right, so this is a map that I made last year of all the congregations that participated last year. So you see that a lot of congregations are centered in Florida and the Northeast, and some in California, and then we've got a few in Denver or Colorado and other parts of the country. And this was a fun map that we created last year, and there are 35 points on this map. So we had 35 congregations participate, and we still have more than 3,000 potential new donors. And just today, we've already gotten our third match from the drives that were held in September. And you know, this is really great because it takes a few months from the time that somebody swabs into the registry to the time that their data actually shows up into the registry. It takes a few months. So if you think about it, these people have only been on the registry for just a few months, and we're already getting matches. So this is really great news, and we're really excited, and we hope to make even more impact in the years to come. I'm going to turn over now to Tamara Hotchman from Gift of Life, and she is going to talk all about the organization. And let me take one moment to unmute her, and there you go. Tamara, are you there?
Yes, hi.
Okay.
All right, so Gift of Life Bone Marrow Foundation started over 20 years ago when our executive director, Jay Feinberg, was diagnosed with leukemia. And at the time, there was only a 5% chance that someone from an Ashkenazi background would actually find a match. So his doctor told him to go home and prepare his bucket list. And his mother wouldn't take no for an answer. So she actually started looking for his match. And it took 4 years and 60,000 people and until they finally found someone who could save his life. And so he promised that after that, once his life was saved and he was better, he would continue doing this for other people. So with the effort of the gift of life, we've actually found that we've gone from 5% chance of finding a match to greater than 70% chance. And sorry, Veronica, if you want to go to the next slide. Sorry, hold on one second. All right. Sorry about that. Okay. So Gift of Life runs an average of 700 drives a year, and they are in a lot of different places. We do them. Most of our drives are on college campuses. We do a lot of congregations, churches. We also do a lot of camps. We actually are starting our camp program again this year. Okay, there you go. So 60% on college campuses. And we actually did a study a few years ago, and if there are 300,000 Jews in the worldwide registry, which we're associated with, then every single Jewish person would have a match. So right now, we currently have 236,000 on our registry. So our goal is to hit that 300,000. We're hoping in the next couple of years. That way we can go ahead and help everyone. And then last year, we actually swabbed 30,000 new donors into the registry, and they're going into the international registry, so potentially they can help anyone in the world. And then on the side, you can see a photo of Lillian and Daisy, and they're both doing really well, especially Daisy, and she was very young when she got her transplant. All right, so we have a few different things about the donor recruitment drive. So the bulk of our drives are actually run by volunteers. We do this. It's very, very simple. The volunteers will be trained over the phone. We ship all the supplies to you down to the rubber bands, and then you just ship everything back to us. It's very, very easy. It's very simple. And, of course, during your drive, you are going to have someone that you can call as a backup, just in case. So we're going to assign you 2 people. You're going to have the first person and the second person that you can call if you have any questions during the drive, and we'll be there 100%. All right, so let's go over the steps donation. So there are 4 steps to donating. The first one is a cheek swab, which is, of course, what you will be doing. The second step, if someone is called as a match, is the confirmatory typing. It's a simple blood draw just to verify that the DNA is, in fact, a match. And the third step is a workup, which is a full physical and medical history. If that goes through, they're going to go for their donation. Now, there's 2 types of donations. 80% of the time is a peripheral blood stem cell donation. You're actually, it's pretty simple. It's a lot like donating platelets with the Red Cross. Just takes a little bit longer. And the other 20% of the time is a bone marrow procedure. Please keep in mind the bone marrow procedure is outpatient and takes an average of 2 hours or so. But once the doctor clears you after the procedure, you can just walk right out of the hospital and you're good to go. And one thing to note with Gift of Life is that when your donors do go to the donation center, there's always going to be a representative there to help them through the day, because I know it's a little bit weird when you walk into a hospital and you're just supposed to go ahead and help someone else out and you're not really sure where to go. So we have someone with you for that.
Awesome. Right. Thank you. Thank you, Tamara. And I just want to add on to what Tamara was saying. I staffed a couple of peripheral blood stem cell donations last year, and we just provide a lot of comfort and support to the donors, in addition, obviously, to transmitting information to Gift of Life just to keep them updated. But I was constantly running down to the little hospital store to buy food and snacks for the donor, and they were watching movies. So this, I'm more than happy to share more on my experiences and what it's like for the donor, just based on what I've done. And so if this is something that you're interested to hear more about, definitely reach out to me after the drive. But first, I want to talk about running a Gift of Life drive. And I know there's people on the call that have run drives either in their congregation or elsewhere. And essentially, it's I would say the backbone is the same. You know, we're doing the swabbing at tables. But I think for Yom Kippur, there are a few key points that I want to point out that we'll go over in running a drive for success. So the first is, let's just talk about what your congregation will need on Yom Kippur. You'll need an empty classroom, hallway, library, etc. And normally when I would, if a congregation or a group wanted to run a swab drive, I would say be in the most front center place you possibly can be. And of course, if such a space is available on Yom Kippur, I would definitely encourage congregations to use that space, but know that it's definitely not required for the nature of this drive, and that's for two reasons. One is that we hope that, and what we will help congregations do is help congregations publicize the drive to all of their congregants before Yom Kippur. So hopefully everyone who comes into the door will already know about the drive. So it doesn't need to be front and center for publicity purposes. The second is we hope that congregations have a lot of buy-in from the clergy so that they're talking about the drive from the bima so that people know that maybe they have to go to classroom 8 or whatever corner they could possibly find to find enough space for a drive. So think creatively. Really any classroom, hallway, or library, of course, lobbies and other areas work as well to run a drive. Second is you'll need tables and chairs. People always ask me how many, and that's a really hard question to answer because it depends how big your congregation is. And I think this is something that the drive coordinators who are on the call will be able to help you with, and they can talk about from their experiences. And of course, myself and Samara will be available to answer questions on how many tables and chairs you'll need. But not only does it depend on how big your congregation is, it depends on the demographics of your congregation and how many people are actually potential donors. And it'll also depend on if you have a drive that runs all day, so from before the first service to the end of Ne'ilah, or if you have a drive just between services. So those are all factors to keep in mind. And then, of course, you'll need to provide not only volunteers, but trained volunteers. And again, the number of volunteers is the same story as the tables and chairs. So it really depends on the format and the timing of your drive, and the size of your congregation will determine how many volunteers you need. But no matter if you need 5 volunteers or 50 volunteers, they all should be trained volunteers. And Gift of Life will train the drive coordinators, which I'll talk about in a few moments, we'll train them to train your volunteers. And I think someone has their cell phone going off, so if you could just put your phone on mute. It looks on my end everyone's muted, but just in case I miss somebody, I would really appreciate it. All right. And so now I want to talk about what Gift of Life and the rack will provide. We provide, of course, all drive day materials. So as Tamara mentioned, you'll get a box with all the swabs, everything down to rubber bands and tape, even banners and signs, everything you could possibly need to run a successful drive. We'll also provide sample media or sample social media posts. So if you've already looked through the toolkit, you'll see, I think page 7 or 8, I can't remember the top of my head, we've got some sample posts that you can use for Twitter and Facebook. Of course, if you tweet or post or share the rack, or what am I trying to say? If you mention the rack on Facebook or Twitter, of course, we'll retweet you and try to promote your content as well, because we want everyone to know what our congregations are doing. And then again, same place in the packet, we've also got sample temple bulletin ads, things you can add in emails or newsletters. Of course, you don't have to use what we have in the toolkit. These are just samples and examples of things to use. But of course, you can also just fill in the blanks and use that as well. We want to make this as easy as possible for all of our congregations. And then we also will provide flyers for you to hang around your congregation for folks who come into the congregation. They can see what's going on. We also provide clipboards, and clipboards are definitely a gem in this process, because what they allow you to do is kind of dissipate the funnel effect. So a lot of people might come and want to sign up to swab, but the part of swabbing that takes the longest is definitely filling out the consent form. So you can have like a lot of cluster of people in one table, and then where the swabbing is happening, which is a much quicker process, can be pretty empty. So what clipboards allow people to do is just take a consent form, go off to a corner, fill it out, and then come back. And it just makes it easier with crowd management, and there's less waiting in line. And it worked really well last year in our congregations. Press release boilerplate, I don't want to talk too much about it because we will, I'll have more information about this as the summer goes on, but we will provide a template that congregations can use and also a guide for congregations on how to contact your press about this drive. It's not required. If you don't want to involve the press or let the press know about what you're doing, you certainly do not have to, but we didn't do this last year, and we thought that it was a missed opportunity, so we would love to help and support congregations to do this. We'll do one on the national scale from the RAC and the URJ, but if individual congregations want to do this within their own community with their local press, we'll be able to provide that support. This probably won't happen until late summer or early fall, and I know I've already gotten requests for people who have the press already contacting them, and we won't have the boilerplate ready now, but please still get in touch with me, and I'll have the said press person contact our communications staff who can pitch the story and provide a nice story for your community. And then we also provide high holiday tickets. And I put that in quotation marks. They're not meant to replace the tickets that congregations actually use for high holidays, but it's just a fun and unique way to highlight the drive. Congregations can place orders, and we'll send them to you before your high holiday mailers go out. And the idea is that if you do like a physical paper high holiday mailer, you'll include them in those mailers so that everybody who is coming to services will know about the drive. And then finally, the Yom Kippur Planning Guide. I think most people on this call probably have one, but for anybody that signed up from the call through social media and we haven't talked then, please get in touch, and I will send you a planning guide. We also have similar information at our website, which is listed at the bottom of the screen, yomkippurproject.org. So refer to either of those places or both, and we'll get you set up with what you need. So it's easy, right? It's not that hard. Yeah, it's a lot of fun. I think congregations had a lot of fun last year planning this. And I just want to talk now about kind of bigger picture drive planning milestones. And these aren't necessarily deadlines if for some reason, if the congregation is really on board and doesn't have, for example, a drive coordinator in time or hasn't done something else, like it's not a make it or break it type of thing, but we think that the dates we set will help congregations plan for success. So the first milestone coming up at the end of next month is drive coordinator name and info. And just to talk quickly about what a drive coordinator is for those who don't know, as the name describes, a drive coordinator is the person who coordinates the drive, but more importantly is also my main point of contact to the congregation. And also oversees the volunteer recruitment effort, will be the person that Gift of Life trains, and then they'll be the person that turns around and trains their volunteers, and then will also be the person that will lead the effort in publicizing the drive. This obviously does not mean that the drive coordinator is doing all of those things, but they certainly are overseeing it. So we hope that the drive coordinator has a good relationship with Temple staff who will get necessary blurbs into Temple emails, and the drive coordinator should be able to work with other groups in the congregation to secure volunteers. So like Sisterhood or Brotherhood or the Young Adult Group or whatever, working with those groups to get their members involved with the drive and signed up to volunteer. The next milestone is the end of summer, and this is when Tamara, so the person you just heard from, will contact the coordinator to set up a drive coordinator training. So it's basically a train-the-trainer call. You'll learn how to swab, and then you'll learn how to train other people how to swab. And even though you'll set up the date, your training actually won't be until early or mid-September. But we're going to have a lot of drive coordinators, so we want to start early in getting these dates on the calendar. So that's why we hope that by the end of summer, by the end of July, everyone will have a drive coordinator training set up. And then early September, set a date for your volunteer training. And again, your volunteer training is not by September 1st. We actually prefer it to be closer to Rosh Hashanah, and ideally, if possible, between Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. And this is when your volunteers will come in for a 30 to 45-minute training. They'll sign the necessary paperwork, and then they'll be all ready to go once Yom Kippur comes. A lot of times, if you run a drive before, a volunteer might just arrive to their shift 20 or so minutes early to be trained. But for Yom Kippur, we strongly encourage / really want congregations to have all the volunteers trained before Yom Kippur, so we're not having to deal with that on Yom Kippur because of the nature of the drive. And also, I'm assuming a lot of congregations on the call might have thousands of people in their congregation that day, and having to train volunteers is just going to make it a big mess. So ideally between Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, so everything is fresh in everyone's mind. But if it's easier with your congregation schedule to do it before Rosh Hashanah, that's totally fine as well. There's a few more. So by, I think this is actually the day before Rosh Hashanah this year. So before Rosh Hashanah, Drive Coordinator will have a training call with Tamara. And so remember, those were scheduled back in July, and the training will take place by Rosh Hashanah. And then right after Rosh Hashanah, just make sure that your volunteer schedule is finalized and fill in any gaps. And I just want to take a minute to talk about volunteer shifts, because I know, again, people are going to have questions about how many volunteers that they need. And again, this is something that's going to have to be kind of dealt with on an individual basis. And you know, it's hard to tell because, and again, it depends on how long the drive is, if it's all day, if it's just for a few hours. My recommendation that I think worked really well with congregations last year was to get subgroups in your congregation to quote-unquote adopt shifts. So for example, maybe the Brotherhood adopts the shift from 2 to 4 p.m. And so they're in charge of getting all of those shifts filled. And so that takes that shift off the drive coordinator's plate. And then maybe the Sisterhood does 4 to 6, et cetera. And so then right after Rosh Hashanah, just look at your schedule, look at where you need to fill in, and go ahead and do that and start making, I would say at this point, individual phone calls to people. And then right before Yom Kippur, just confirm your volunteers and hold your volunteer training. And this, you know, what I said earlier about getting this on the calendar as early as possible, because I know congregation calendars like to fill up. All right, so with that, I want to turn it over. We're going to hear from Jane. I'm not sure if Judy is able to make it, but Jane is definitely on the call. And Jane is the temple administrator at Kol Ami in White Plains, New York, and they swabbed 131 people in a congregation of about 800 families. So very successful last year. It was great to work with them. And I'm just going to unmute her phone. Let's see. Are you there, Jane?
Yes, I am.
Awesome. And yeah, so go ahead. Take it away.
Okay. So I want to say, first of all, that Gift of Life and the RAC really did a fabulous job of providing us with everything we needed. The box that comes into you will have everything you need. It answers all your questions. So do not, do not worry about not having the right things. You will have everything. I think one of the most important things that I can say is that you need to build interest in the drive. So what I did last year was I started in my connection, which is our monthly bulletin, building up interest by saying, you know, that we're going to participate, that we're very excited. I asked for volunteers to contact me at that time. And then when I mailed my High Holy Day tickets, I included the little Gift of Life ticket in every envelope, whether I thought the person would be eligible or not. The next thing that I would suggest is that you pre-register as many people as possible. And what I did last year, but what I'm going to do even more this year, is I'm going to have volunteers available Rosh Hashanah to have the forms out and to pre-register people. because what happens is most people will stop after the service is over, and there was a tremendous line of people. And as it was said before, it takes more time to fill out the form than it does to get swabbed. So if a person is all pre-registered, they can walk right up to the swabbing table, and they don't have to wait to do their pre-registration forms. So it's one thing this year that I'm going to try to do a little differently than I did last year. Again, it's very important, and somebody said this, that the rabbis, the clergy, perhaps the president of your congregation speaks about the gift of life. What we did last year was the rabbi included it in their talk on Rosh Hashanah, and then again on Yom Kippur Day. Volunteers were very easy to get for this, and I broke them up into 2-hour sessions so that nobody was sitting there all day long. It's very important to get a very capable director, drive director, to help you, because if you are like I am, the executive director of the synagogue, I am very busy that day with other things that I have to take care of. We were very lucky last year. Unbeknownst to me, somehow the local TV station found out about us, and they came in and did a really nice on-air interview and showed the people being swabbed, and that encouraged more people to come by. So that was a very big plus. And I think that's about it.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And I think Judy is on, and so let me just mute Jane, and then I'm unmuting Judy. So Judy, are you there? Judy, it says you're self-muted, so if you want to look at your phone or the thing, I'll give you a few minutes. Oh,
can you hear me now?
Yep, we got you.
Oh, boy, alas. Okay. Well, we had a terrific experience in Atlanta. We started early on in, really, I think it was in our May issue of our monthly newsletter that, know that this is coming. I think in our August issue, it may have been, I'm sorry, it may have been on the front of our newsletter, and it had been in a story the whole time. We had done a video with one of our congregants who had been swabbed and had been totally part of the entire process. She met the person that she was a match to, and they formed a relationship, and they were able to follow each other for several years until, unfortunately, he passed away. But that was a really nice video that we had connected to all the publicity, all the electronic publicity that we had, because it was somebody who was well known in our congregation who was really able to be affected by the whole process completely. So she was sort of our face to the campaign, if you will. And then we had the chairs that we had for the campaign. They were very well known, very well connected, liked, respected, and so we picked really good chairs to participate. And it's sort of, in the very beginning, we didn't have a lot going on, but of course, as closer it got to the campaign, the more involved they were. But they were both the same kind of people who really enjoy like a mission volunteer experience, knowing that it was going to be over on Yom Kippur. Do you know what I mean? It wasn't like this eternal, huge campaign. So I think picking the right volunteers to chair it was really important. And because they were so well connected, a lot of people were, had buy-in because they were connected. We originally wanted to have a swab. We were going to take a 6-foot PVC pipe and put a bunch of cotton batting on the top, and then have a stand for it. and we were going to cut out a little notch in it, and from the notch hang information that said, you know, like in a little, like a plastic clip, about what the swabbing was about. And mostly we just wanted it to get people's attention, because you don't see a swab in your lobby very often. So that was our idea, to go ahead and be able to have some obvious attention, if you will. On Rosh Hashanah, our rabbi swabbed himself and said, he opened the container, he swabbed himself, and he said, "I may have just saved a life." And that's really got people's attention. He did that at every single service. We have 2 services on Rosh Hashanah, and we have about 1,500 families about right now in our synagogue. When we did this, it was probably true that there were 1,300. But so you can imagine how many people were able to pay attention to him. When we started with our High Holy Day materials, with our brochure, if you will, that you get during the summer, well, certainly last summer, because we had so many people who had been swabbed before. We knew that there were people who had yet been touched. So we went ahead and we tried to reach those people who had not yet been touched. And we had it in all of our High Holy Day material information. So here are things that you can do during the High Holy Days. And on Yom Kippur, the very top thing we had of things to do on Yom Kippur are: 1, participate in the bone marrow swabbing. And for us, because we have so many people coming in and out of the synagogue, for us to have it in the middle of people's traffic pattern, that just wasn't going to happen. But what we did, the way our synagogue is set up and our chapel is set up, is it's sort of like a V, with our main synagogue off to the left and our chapel to the right, and in the middle is a courtyard, and that's where we rented tents and had the swabbing in the tents. And it worked beautifully. We initially started to ask if Brotherhood would take a shift and Sisterhood and Adult Ed, but that really was becoming increasingly clear for our synagogue that didn't work. But when we told people, here are the ways that you can give for the gift of life, if you've already swabbed, please volunteer to swab others, or to participate as a volunteer. And if you can't volunteer because you're over the age limit, then we would love to have you help. And we had no problem getting volunteers throughout the day at all. I mean, none. I mean, people, we filled up, we put it on, I think Volunteer Spot is what we used, and within 36 hours, all of our slots were full. So we had no trouble at all in that way. We had plenty of signage. We let people know when they got off the buses to come to Temple for the services that these were some things that you could do today at the Temple. Don't forget to get swabbed. Don't forget to get swabbed. We had plenty of PR on our kiosks, in our preschool e-blasts, our Shabbat to Shabbat e-blast, our religious school e-blast. I mean, we blasted everybody. And by the end of the day, people really came out. And it was very funny because the people who were over the age limit to be able to be swabbed were a little bit upset that they were too old and they could not contribute. So that was very exciting. Let's see. I'm trying to think of anything else big. The main thing is that it was part of our High Holy Day material, and we made this as a High Holy Day mission that, what better time to give the gift of life for somebody than on Yom Kippur. Make these High Holy Days meaningful for you and give the gift of life. We had our own stickers that we made, and there was a beautiful sense of camaraderie. I mean, it was beautiful, and we took pictures and we posted it on Facebook, and we had posted it in our upcoming Shabbat magazine. I mean, our upcoming monthly magazine, and it was a great experience. I'll stop here. I don't want to hog up the call.
That was great. Thanks so much, both to Judy and Jane. So now the line is, well, the line's not open, but I will open the line for any questions. So go ahead and type them in the box, or you can raise your hand, and I will scan the crowd. And just make sure that if you want to ask a question over audio, you have to have dialed in the audio code. So I see one question so far from Elliot. Let me go ahead and unmute you. All right. Can you hear us, or can we hear you, I guess? That's a better question. Are you there, Elliot? So Elliot, go ahead and either enter in your audio or type the question in the box, and we'll get you that way. And I'll try again in a few moments, and I will go to another question. So, so one person is asking if we can run a drive over a series of days or of times during the high holiday season, and the answer is absolutely yes. If you want to, I was talking to a couple people last week about running a drive starting when religious school day opens, because you get a lot of the young parents into your congregation, and then you want to continue on through Yom Kippur. Absolutely. And if it comes to be where we have to you have to send back some swab kits, and then we send you more, like we can work on that, work that out with Tamara. But yes, the more swabbing, the better. And then another question is, can the forms be pre-completed online? And I will actually let Tamara answer that call. So Tamara, I think you're unmuted.
Okay. So the forms will actually be completed at the moment of when they are doing their swabbing. It's really quick. It's just one page front and back. Should only take about 5 minutes or so, but they will actually do it in person. The reason for that is because everything has to be barcoded, so we want to keep those barcodes together so that way nothing gets lost.
Awesome. And while you're at it, do you also want to talk about the age range for swabbies?
Yes, absolutely. So in order to register to swab, you have to be between the ages of 18 and 60. At 61, you automatically fall off the international registry. Unfortunately, there's nothing we can do about it. But if you're outside of the swabbing range, you can definitely volunteer, so that makes a huge difference also.
Awesome. And then I've got a question about other congregations that are in the area that are participating, and if you can find out who those congregations are. So it's on my to-do list, but if you notice, I had the map of all the congregations from last year on the map, and that map lives on YomKippurProject.org. And I'm in the process of updating the map for this year. Obviously, it's not inclusive of everyone who's going to participate, because I'm sure we'll continuously get more and more congregations, so I would check back periodically. But within the next week, I will have the map of this year that we have so far, and there's about 30 congregations as of now, so hopefully we're going to increase that closer to 75 or 100, and you'll be able to check back in as we get those congregations in. Let's see, and then I've got a question about how many volunteers are needed per time slot. And I'm going to, I remember talking with Judy last year about the volunteers, so I'm going to let her answer that, and maybe Jane will have something to add. So Judy, I think you've muted yourself, so if you want to unmute and then talk about the number of volunteers per shift, that would be great.
Sure. We had a shift of an hour and a half, and because we felt that people would be more willing, we felt like changing the shift every hour felt crazy-making to us, and we felt that 2 hours might be too long. So we went ahead and we opted for an hour and a half, and we had about 5 or 6 to 8 people per shift. You know, we ended up getting more volunteers than we really needed at some points, because people, because it was Yom Kippur and it was maybe our services go from 9 to 11 and then 1 to 3. And then we had the swab from 8:30 until 5. And so we had a little bit of time before the first service, during the first service, and you know what I mean? So we tried to make it as easy as possible for people to give at some point during the day. Well, for some people who like to be at synagogue all day long on Yom Kippur, but don't necessarily want to go to all the speakers and activities and things that we have going on all day, this was really a perfect place for them to volunteer. So we really ended up with more volunteers than we needed. I would say, based on the number of people we have in our congregation, having 5 people is the minimum that I would have per shift, because for us, we had a handful of people just welcoming people. We had people welcoming people and showing them where they need to go to fill out their information. And then we had other people coming who were helping people to fill out the form in case they had questions, and were providing the swabs and that kind of thing. And then we had some other people who were putting together our boxes to get ready to ship, to ship back and to count the number that we had. We found that the magic number was probably no less than 5, no more than 8, because then after a while they would just, there were lull times when nobody came for more than an hour, and then a service or a speaker would let out and would be inundated. So, and we let people know by using the volunteer spot, people could see who had volunteered at what time, so they could volunteer with their friends if they were trying to figure out when it would be a good time for them to volunteer.
Awesome. Thanks, Judy. Let me go ahead and mute you again. I hope that was helpful, and I think, in the end, this is something also in addition to this, frame of 5 to 8 volunteers, something that Tamara and I will work with all the congregations based on your size and how long you're planning on running the drive. Just keep in mind, the shorter your hours, the more of an influx of volunteers you might have at one time. Also keep in mind, before and after services might be a time you want to beef up your volunteer base. There are a number more questions, so I just want to make sure that I get to them. Just to clarify what Tamara said about the forms. So it's true they cannot be completed online, but forms can be distributed early and then brought to Yom Kippur. And I know that Jane did that at her congregation. So Jane, you want to talk about that and just say if it was successful or worth the effort, like if people didn't bring back the forms, things like that. So you are unmuted.
Okay. I think it would have been easier for us last year if more people had filled out their forms in advance. So what I said was, this year, that's one of the things that I'm going to emphasize a little more, and have a separate area set up on Rosh Hashanah for people to pick up their forms. Those people who did fill out their forms in advance, everybody brought them back. It was not an issue at all. But it certainly makes the day go more easily, because otherwise, as you said, when services let out, you can have an immense line of people. And, you don't want people to feel impatient or have to rush off for one thing or another. So if their forms are filled out, they don't have to stand on that line. They can go directly to get swabbed.
Awesome. Thank you. So that's really great to hear that people did bring them back. Because that was
they did. They did.
Yeah. Awesome. Okay, let's see. More questions coming in. Do the flyers explain how a match saves lives so people can understand why they should be doing this? I'm going to let Tamara answer that. Tamara?
Well, when it comes to the flyers, we can put anything on there. So generally, they're going to show a picture that says, this person saved this person's life, and we have a lot of donor-recipient matches we can put on there. But the text can really change. So if I create a flyer for you, I can go ahead and I'll send it out to you if you want to put some something else in there, if you want to alter it, however, I can go ahead and do that. So it's definitely customizable to whatever you want to put on there.
Awesome. And while I have you on the line, do you just want to briefly review again what happens after someone is a match?
Sure. So if someone is a match, they're going to get a phone call from us letting them know, and then they're going to go in for a blood test. It's going to verify their DNA. If they are the best possible match, then they're going to go in for a full physical and a workup. And then if that goes through and they're healthy, they're going to go in for the donation. And then we have the two types. We have the 80%, that's peripheral blood stem cell. So it's a lot like donating platelets. And then the other 20%, that's the bone marrow procedure.
Awesome. And then one more. So just can you clarify the difference between like the Gift of Life registry versus the international registry, and just clarify what we mean by like recruiting Jews? Like this isn't a Jewish registry, correct?
Right. So with Gift of, what would happen was you're going to go in and you're going to put all your information with Gift of Life. We're going to keep all of your personal information in our office that never leaves. What we do is we are associated with the with the bone marrow donor worldwide, and that basically means that the number that we would assign to you is going to go into their system, and so a doctor anywhere in the world can see it, and they can see the DNA and see what's matching for the patient that they need. And then they're going to call us, and we set everything up. So you register with us because we keep all of your information, and the only thing that the doctors anywhere in the world would see would be, you know, the little bit of DNA that they need, the information from that, and the number that we assigned you.
Awesome. So there's just a couple more questions that I can wrap up, and I hope in one sentence, and then I just want to wrap up this call so we can get out of here on time so you can move on with your day. And I just have a few questions about people saying, can we register, or can we swab on Coordinator, or can we swab, what are the hours we have to do it? Can we even swab, have a drive in June or something? And the answer is, it's what your congregation wants to do. So we did have some congregations swab just on Coordinator last year. We had some do it all day from the very before the first service all the way through breakfast and then everything in between. So it's really what works with your congregation and what you and your simple staff and clergy agree to do. So, you know, I would be, if you're already on board, I would begin having these conversations with said people to start making the schedule, and then this will allow you to figure out what your next steps are. I thought I just saw one more question pop up. Oh, about the reform movement. So this is a project of the URJ. Obviously, any congregation that wants to participate in this can. However, when you get to conservative or Orthodox sects of Judaism, there are issues with writing on Yom Kippur, and also it's going to be Shabbat. So, you know, that's often problematic for swabbing because you do have to fill the consent forms out. So I just want to move on. If you have any other questions, please email me. My contact information is at the bottom. You can also call the number below, and I'm happy to talk to you or also set up a time to chat. So next steps, if you're a congregation that's still on the fence and you've decided you want to participate, just confirm with me. Again, shoot me an email, give me a phone call, and I love to hear from you. And you don't have to have your drive coordinator information yet, but if you just know your congregation is on board, just let me know. And then that's actually the next step, is to let me know your drive coordinator and their contact information by the end of May, and I will get in touch with them and set up a call and get them all on board for this. And they could be on the webinar. They don't have to be on the webinar. I'm going to repeat most of this information anyways. And then finally, you can, as you decide to participate in this drive, and if you want to have the little tickets to send out on your mailers, I think I have this example one. Yep, right there. That's just an example of one that we used a few years ago. We're not going to use that one again. but just an example, if you want to include in your mailer, just go ahead and send me how many you want for your congregation and also the deadline. So like before your mailer needs to go out, to give us a week or so of buffer. But just send that information to me, and you can reach me at giftoflife@rac.org. And you can also just call me and let me know the information, and I'll record it in my spreadsheet, and we'll get you that stuff. So thank you so much. There's my contact information in big letters. If that makes it a little easier to write that down, and I'll keep this screen up for a few moments so you can write it down yourself. Also, this webinar has been recorded, and it will be on YouTube. It'll be a private link, so only people that request it will be able to see it if they weren't able to make this call, so just keep that in mind. And again, please be in touch with any questions. I'm going to go ahead and close out and thank everyone for taking the time out of their day to be here. And again, I apologize about the tech hiccups at the beginning of the call. And yeah, so thank you so much. And I'm going to just hold on to this website or to this page for a little longer so you can type everything in. But otherwise, thanks so much.